You know, there are some people who are calling this the end of days. They're calling this Armageddon. I mean, the world is in such amazing chaos. And what I'd say is, no, it's going to be okay. And when I look at the research and the 500 people we interviewed and the way the state of the world where people are, what was very interesting, very, very cool, very obvious is there are many humans in the world that are just truly credible people. They're really good at what they do. They mean well. They are servant leaders. They add value to those people they interact with. They enter relationships with good heart and deliver. And when things go wrong, they work on it together and they make things happen. And what happens is that the definition of credibility is just not the right one in the dictionary. What credibility needs to be, it's not just a word, it's a way of living, it's a way of life, it's a way of interacting. And those people who are not credible, I just call them dubious. It's not necessarily a bad word, because there are people who can be credible and dubious in some situations, and there are people who live in dubious nation that can actually easily move over and be credible. And so what I'll say to you is we are at a war. And the war is those people who have been taught, who are raised, who are brought up in such a way where they're not credible, that they're brought up living in dubious nation and they're told that is the right thing to do. And it's not. It is not the right thing for current generation. It's not the right thing for our kids. It's not the right thing for their kids. We need a better world. We need to live in a world where the interactions we have are just that much better. We need to fight the war against dubious nation, which is winning 1,000 times over. And so I encourage you to read this book, to adopt some of the practices, to make this your own. Figure out how credibility works for you. Participate with us in Credibility Nation. I'm looking forward to having your participation, for you being part of this. So I have lived a really beautiful life so far. I've been in Silicon Valley for 35 years. I've been married for 31 years. I have a beautiful son. And work-wise, I've done lots of really cool things. You could check out my bio. Highlights, sat on the board of a public company for a decade, ran 4 CEO networking groups for a decade, created 4 different executive business programs at Silicon Valley universities, created over 20 companies, ran 4 conferences for Comdex. And as a book publisher, which I started publishing in 2005, between 2005 and 2017, I published over 800 books. And I kept getting these gifts, these opportunities where I was kind of being told I was doing the wrong thing. Because what I want to say is, although between 2005 and 2017, we published over 800 books, I was actually serving the wrong audience. And it turns out what I recognized is that the audience I needed to serve are people who just don't have the time to write their own books. What I was doing up until then, I was satisfying me. How do I write a book quicker? How do I do it more efficiently, more effectively? And I'll give a little bit more detail. What happened is I ran a Kickstarter at the end of 2016. It hit 250% of goal. How you make a Kickstarter successful is you take a product or service you offer in real life and you offer it at a discount. So 20 people paid us that when they wrote their book, we would publish it. And what I wanted in terms of serving me as a client, how do I write a book quicker? I got the book writing process down to 8 hours. So 20 people paid us that when they wrote their book, we'd publish it. And it would take 8 hours to write. So fast forward a year, end of 2017, I shot my TED Talk. And it's the one that represents the book you see back there, which was absolutely beautiful. And I looked at, one of the things I looked at the time with my thinking hat being much more global and much more giving, I looked at the number of people who actually wrote their book. So 20 people paid us. 1 year later, 3 people actually wrote their book. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's not that doesn't make me feel good. That is not in line with my integrity to take money for services we don't offer. And so it started bothering me. and I'm going to make it worse. What I did is I went to my friends in the online learning space. I went to my friends in the internet marketing space, and they both said the same thing. They go, Mitchell, do you realize that 3 out of 20 is a 15% utilization rate? That's fantastic. For me, I'm looking at 17 people who couldn't find 8 hours in a 12-month period to do something they paid for that would be beneficial for them. So that's when in 2018, I started flipping the switch on my company to be a done-for-you company where we would actually ghostwrite for other people. And we are at this stage, it's what we do is 4 months from the time we start, 10 hours of the author's time. After a 3-hour interview where I'm pouring the genius, we ghostwrite, publish, distribute, make them Amazon best-selling authors. It's actually a beautiful process. And at the beginning of 2019, I went to a friend of mine who runs a branding group, and I wanted to have a different brand because I thought the brand for somebody who's doing what I'm doing is different than just a traditional publisher. And we came up with the brand Global Credibility Expert. Having been in Silicon Valley as long as I had, having done 25 years of thought leadership, I didn't have a problem with this. And what was fascinating is about 2 months after carrying that brand, I go, I want to do something that really reinforces that brand. And so I went to my team and I started talking about doing research, because what I was thinking about when I woke up one day was I was thinking about Napoleon Hill, 500 millionaires think and grow rich. Mitchell Levy, 500 thought leaders, interviewing them on credibility. And at the time, I had no idea what the title of my book was. What I did, which was different, is I wanted my team to be involved. For anyone who's running a team, you want your team to also be rainmakers. You want your team to also be excited about what the mission and the overall goals of the company is and what we're doing, and be responsible and feel good about the success of the company, right? So instead of actually building it and giving it, I let the team build it. So instead of taking about a month or two, it took 5. And we started about 5 months later. We did a couple months of just practice where we did like 4 to 5 interviews each. And then we went full blown. And I was excited about what we were doing. But let me tell you what I set the infrastructure appropriately, had the right ideas in mind. The same 5 questions that we started with are still the same 5 questions that we ask now. The interviews are 6 to 8 minutes. I've had a number of them go 4 minutes, like super cool. If somebody can actually share who they are in a 4-minute period. But what was interesting is I didn't know I needed to keep track of stuff like, does somebody come on time? So when in the interview do they come? Do they come prepared? Have they actually been ready and follow through on the stuff that we need to do to make stuff happen? So the first interview, set up the system, set up this process, so proud. What happens is when we do the interview, we're doing a Facebook Live. Then our team will pull 10 aha messages out of that 6-minute interview. So 2 weeks later, we typically send those 10 aha messages. And then after that, about 2 months down the road, we publish on the Thought Leader Life website, which is Vimeo. About a month after that, we go on basically C-Suite Radio, where we're on Stitcher Podcast, Apple and Google Podcast. And for selective interviews after that, we actually have a global Credibility Nation show, and we put them there. What happened is I wanted to have the title and have somebody look at me and go, hey, yes, that's it. You are the global credibility expert. And what actually really did transpire is somewhere around interview 40, I entered flow. I knew what I was doing. I knew the value of what I was contributing to. I knew what this would ultimately be. This is a topic that's so valuable, so important, so vital. And the types of feedback and I have to say the love that I'm getting from those people I interview, it's just so amazing. It was interview number 250 that we came up with the title of the book. But it turned out that the title that we had initially was not the right one. The title we came up with is For Humans That Want to Be Seen as Credible, which is now that is my My CPOP is just humans that want to be seen as credible. So I put the word "for" in front of it. That was the title of the book. That's the subtitle. And the title of the book is the movement we're focused on. It's what we're doing now. And that is, it's Credibility Nation. And so the journey along the way has taught me so much. And I just have to thank for those people who actually have an undergraduate degree or some formal education that they use in life. I have to go back to my undergraduate degree, which was from the University of Miami. It was a Bachelor of Science in Stochastic and Deterministic Models of Operational Research. Because when we put together this model for how to measure and how to do statistics we didn't change it once we started putting it together. And it's such a beautiful set of numbers. So when you take a look at the book and you see the stats and the numbers, these are all statistically significant activities. And it's been a beautiful and fun ride. And I'm just so happy. But this is how the birth of Credibility Nation came about, which is really the desire to focus on something that would at first be an interesting title, but in second, as it turns out, it is an interesting way of living. What is credibility and why is it important? I want to say fundamentally, it's important because it's the most important thing you could do as a human. And that is that when you meet somebody and they meet you, whether it's physical or online or anywhere else, that you both get an understanding of who you are, what you do, and you both deliver on your promises. It's not just what you say, it's how you deliver on what you say. And so the first thing that I have to say is that credibility and trust is not the same. And that's the way it's defined in the dictionary. So let's throw out that definition. Credibility is about being known, being likable, and being trustworthy. So trust is important. Let me just tell you, the most important thing to be thinking about is the being known. It's not that I know of you, it's that I know you. That I understand your desire to serve others. Servant leadership is terribly important. That I understand your intent, your commitment, your integrity. So if you can communicate in such a way that people get to know you, and you have to do it where it's not always one-on-one. It's not always specifically synchronous communication where you're communicating one-on-one. So you have to be able to do that. That's part of this definition of credibility. That's part of moving forward successfully, not just in business, but in life. Man, I've enjoyed knowing you for a couple of years, seen who you are and what you do, and you've made some massive changes recently. And the green room conversation is always relevant for me, and I'm so glad you're part of the show, and I'd love the audience to get to know you better through your CPOP. What is your customer point of pain?
Food insecurity. That's it.
Now, we're in the United States of America. We're in this country where we would assume that those two words don't belong in a sentence associated with the United States of America. So it's shocking to hear that. It's shocking to hear what you're doing and how you're helping. Jonathan, tell me more.
So 13.1 million children go to bed hungry every single night. 50% of all food gets thrown away, goes in the landfill. And I'm talking fresh, nutritious food, fruits and vegetables, meats, dairy. And it's just absolutely ridiculous, like you said, in the United States for this to happen. So what we ended up doing was taking shipping containers and turning them into solar refrigerated food pantries. So instead of food going to landfills, it goes into communities that the food is needed. And we can help bring people up and give them hope and happiness and help the communities thrive.
Wow. That is so cool.
Just finished my interview, my cred reel with Mitchell Levy, and just in maybe 5 minutes worth of time, he was awesome. I came in, my CPOP was all over the place, and he was able to just get me directed. I'm sweating bullets thinking that, hey, we're gonna miss the interview, and he's like, I got this. And so he's very, very smooth at what he does. He's very, very, oh my goodness, he just knows exactly where to help you say who you are, be who you are, and deliver your service purpose. And I think that is an awesome thing. I've been waiting 12 years to have somebody help me do that. He did it in 5 minutes. Thank you, Mitchell.
You know what I love about Mitchell Levy is he is an absolute 7th Dan black belt at understanding and implementing one of the most core principles of influence. And that is to become influential and credible in your own right. You need to spend your influence. You need to give influence and credibility to other people. Through his shows and his books, Mitchell spreads influence and credibility like you wouldn't believe to people who deserve it all over the world. I love working with Mitchell. If you're interested or fortunate enough to work with Mitchell Levy, don't walk, run, because this will be one of the best up-leveling in your own credibility and your own influence that you've ever had.
If you could have more love in your life, if you could help those people around you in such a way that they respect you and appreciate you and like you and love you, like how much cooler of a life can that be? In the 500 interviews, there were a small number of people that first time I met them, there was such a beautiful conversation with so much value and opportunity transferred between us. We actually both said we love each other, and it was the first time we met each other. You know what? That is really cool. So if you could live a life full of credibility, you could live a life full of purpose and full of love. And isn't that a life worth living? I think so.